Hi, everyone. We are going to wait for a few seconds that some people are joining. Thank you for joining us today. Hi, everyone. Just waiting that some people are joining at the moment, so we're going to wait in a few seconds. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Liliana Fernandez. I am the Leadership Officer at the National Women's Council. And today we are going to do the second webinar in our two-part series marking Anti-Racism Month. Today's conversation is about fighting hate, discrimination, and abuse against women in politics. This webinar is organized by the National Women's Council and the Irish Network Against Racism to bring together women who are actively working to combat racism and hatred, challenge discrimination, and foster inclusion in political and public life. We are honored to welcome a panel of inspiring women, activists, local representatives, and a retired public servant who are strong advocates for social justice. Women across the island are at the forefront of the fight against discrimination and are helping to create safer, more inclusive structures that support women from all backgrounds in participating in politics in Ireland. As outlined in some of the National Women's Council research in this area, women in politics, particularly those from minority communities, including ethnic minorities, LGBTQI+, and young women, are disproportionately affected by political abuse. This abuse often takes the form of threats, violence, and intimidation targeting women and their families during campaigns and while in office. It includes physical, sexual, emotional, and psychological violence and is frequently rooted in misogyny, sexism, racism, and homophobia. Women from marginalized communities such as traveler, migrant, Black, disabled, and LGBTQI+ women are especially targeted. The 2024 Oireachtas Task Force on Safe Participation in Political Life highlights that social media remains the primary channel through which this abuse is carried out. The consequences are severe: mental health challenges, concerns for personal safety, and reduced political engagement. A recent report from the Immigrant Council of Ireland found that 74% of migrant candidates in the last local elections experienced harassment, and 56% had their campaigns posters stolen or defaced. Fighting this discrimination and abuse requires coordinated, systematic action to uphold democratic values and ensure a political environment that is safe, respectful, and truly inclusive for all. I'm delighted to introduce you to our panelists today, and I will read their bios and then I will introduce one of each of them. Zoe O'Reilly works with the National Traveller Women's Forum, the National Network of Traveller Women, and Traveller Women's Organization. As the political support worker, she advocates for the rights of traveller women in Ireland and works towards dismantling the barriers that traveller women face when participating in politics. Her work focuses on lobbying for policy change and on the provision of practical workshops where traveller women can meet, share experiences and ideas, and develop collective strategies and skills to work towards the enhancement of their position in society. Before working with the National Traveller Women's Forum, Zoe worked with another national traveller organization, the Irish Traveller Movement, and she has also worked in the legal sector. We're pleased to welcome Noreen O'Sullivan, who is an accomplished and executive leader with over 40 years experience in the public sector, operating in the international law enforcement, intelligence, and global safety and security environment. Noreen worked her way through the ranks, of Angarda Chikona, making history to be the first woman to be appointed to several different positions, including being appointed the first ever female commissioner to lead Ireland's National Policing and Security Service. Following her retirement, Noreen was appointed United Nations Assistant Secretary General for Safety and Security, leading teams to address the complex security challenges in various environments worldwide. Most recently, she chaired the Oireachtas Cross-Party Task Force on Safe Participation in Political Life, producing a report to examine the issues of abuse, including online abuse in political life, which we will be discussing later today. Councillor Ejiro O'Hare Stratton is here with us today. She's a local councillor in Drogheda, Orban for Fine Gael. She's an accomplished healthcare professional with over 33 years of experience in this field, and she received her nursing training in Drogheda and holds a degree in human resources management from the National College of Ireland. Councillor Ejiro has a master's degree in employment law from UCD and health service management from Trinity College Dublin. We are here today with Councillor Uremo Adejigni, who was co-opted after the 2019 local elections. She has a degree in mathematics from her home country, Nigeria, and a degree in risk and financial analysis from Dublin Business School. She also holds an MBA from Athlone IT, and in 2021, Councillor Adejigni became Ireland's first Black female African mayor, having been elected as Carcola of the Longford Municipal District. She's a community activist and the founder of the Longford Africans Network, and she served in several boards, including Akidwa, and volunteers in different community groups and the parish council. Thank you very much for joining us today. I will lead the floor now to our speakers to introduce themselves, and I will start with Zoe. And Zoe, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how are you organizing against racism, hate, and discrimination in women's political life? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Liliana, and thanks so much to everyone for being here today. My name is Zoe O'Reilly, and I work with the National Traveller Women's Forum. So that's the national membership organisation for Traveller Women and Traveller Women's organisations in Ireland. So Traveller Women have an extraordinarily strong history of leadership and advocacy, and they're really responsible for building the traveller infrastructure that we have in the country today, but they continue to be excluded from decision-making spaces. So the community development work they're doing just isn't translating into political representation. So we currently have no traveller councillors at local level. There's never been a traveller TD. Senator Eileen Flynn in the Seanad is the only traveller woman to be elected at as a national representative in Ireland, and she's doing a fantastic job, but one representative of the community just simply isn't enough. So my role at the National Traveller Women's Forum is to look at the barriers that traveller women face when they're participating in politics and see what we can do to overcome those barriers. So we run introductory workshops for traveller women about voting awareness, how local government works, leadership training, and then for experienced community advocates who are interested in running in elections down the line, we run advanced training where they could look at running for election, canvassing, public speaking and presentations, media training. We have role models coming in to deliver lectures like Senator Eileen Flynn, Catherine Coffey O'Brien and Dr. Cindy Joyce have participated in those. We run round tables for traveller women to come together and share their experiences and expertise. But we also recognise, I suppose, that for all the training and workshops we can do, things have to change on a systemic level as well. So we do a lot of lobbying and advocacy work for changes in policy around the political participation of traveller women in Ireland. And we work on research with academic partners that looks at the feasibility of bringing in positive measures to encourage, to ensure that traveller women are represented on a national and local level as well. And that would involve kind of, having meetings with representatives from the political parties as well. So that's kind of a very kind of brief whistle-stop tour of the work that I do. Thanks, Liliana.
Thank you very much, Zoe. I'm going to go now with Councillor Ejiro, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Councillor Ejiro Stratton. I'm the local councillor for Drogheda Urban with Fine Gael. I ran for the election first time last year and was elected, and I happened to be the first Black migrant woman to be elected in Loud. My whole background starts with healthcare, like Liliana has said. I came to Ireland over 33 years ago to train as a nurse, and I still work in the local hospital as assistant director of nursing. But my passion for community work led me to establish an organization that we call Hands for Unity, a grassroots organization that focuses on social inclusion, empowerment, and community development. I started this organization seeing the influx of migrants coming into the country and a lot of silo communities being formed. I'm deeply committed to creating opportunity for those who are left out in societies. So I was actually delighted when Finigay asked me last year, will I run for them as a local councillor? I answered this call with passion because I know the work I'm doing in the community could be replicated in government. And I'm delighted I did, because the party itself has actually built me up and mentored me in a way that no other party would have mentored me had it been I went in for election as an independent. So I'm actually happy I'm affiliated with a very good party who is there to empower. Behind the scene, I have worked tirelessly with my organization called Hands for Unity to bring migrant community with the host community to network together. And I'm proud to say that today I have the Filipino community sitting in decision making in the Loud Council. They are sitting in SPC, and they are sitting in the PPN, Loud Public Participation Network. That is all to my hard work. I've also had the India community contributing actively. I have the Senegalese community in my community contributing actively. Some of them are sitting in SPC as well. That's all due to the work I do with Hands for Unity. So in Hands for Unity, we are rooted in the belief that everyone deserves to be seen, everyone deserves to be heard, and everyone deserves to be given a fair chance. And I'm here to help push that. And in local government, that is what I'm actually doing at the minute, representing the people, not just the migrant community, but every community, including the host community. So my work in the hospital continues, and my work in politics continues, and my work in local government continues. And I'm really, really happy when I got this call to say, will you speak today at this program? I said, yes, I will, because my passion is enabling people. I actually work with schools as well. I work with businesses. I deliver courses on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the passion behind that is rooted in my belief of inclusion. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to the National Women Network.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ejiro. Now I'm going to leave you with Noreen O'Sullivan. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana, and hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here with such inspiring women and to hear the stories. So my name is Noreen O'Sullivan. I am the former Commissioner of the Irish Police on Garda Síochána, and also the former Assistant Secretary General for the United Nations with responsibility for safety and security. And I suppose one of the reasons that I am here today is I was asked by the government to chair a cross-party task force on safe participation in political life. And in agreeing to chair the task force, part of my consideration was my experience as both Garda Commissioner, but also from a United Nations perspective, and my passionate belief in the need to have diverse and inclusive representation for democracy all over the world, and most importantly here at home in Ireland, but also in Europe and further afield. And I think, when I look at this, it's something, my advocacy for social justice has been something that has been very close to my heart all of my 40 plus years career. And that hasn't changed. But what I do see is a need for more inclusion and to create more safe and inclusive societies. And by that, I mean a need to respect each other's difference, a need to be able to celebrate our differences and to come together from the grassroots level all the way to the top of government, and to be able to advocate for the changes that are needed to sustain and have positive change and impact for the communities that we all live and want to see thrive together. So as I say, I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to engage in your questions, and I really look forward to hearing the different perspectives and experience of everybody here, because my belief is that together we can achieve a lot more than we can individually. And by working closely together, we can certainly achieve a lot more than we can by everybody working in silos. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Noreen. And I'm going to leave you now with Councillor Uremo Adejimni. And maybe, Noreen, you can turn off your camera if that's okay. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Liliana, and good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to join you today, and thanks for making time for this important discussion. My name is Uremo Adejimi, councillor in Longford County Council. This is my second term as councillor. I was co-opted in 2020 to take the seat of Joe Flaherty when he was elevated to the Dáil. And in 2024, I got re-elected to serve a second term. And as councillor in Longford, my mission is to create equal opportunity for everybody in society through ethical political leadership that will allow everyone to aspire to any field of endeavour. And that is why I have thrown myself fully into my role as a local representative, making myself available to everybody in the community. And my work includes making representations on behalf of residents for various issues. It could be overhanging trees that are dangerous and need to be cut or trimmed. It could be down to potholes on the road that make it difficult for people to get from one point to another in running their daily activities. It could be speed calming interventions at school and at residential areas. It could be housing, it could be transport, local transport interventions. And so, and some days are different from, every day is different. There can be new representations, new requests that come from the community. We're such a diverse community in Longford. So my work is to make sure that I advocate and I am the voice for people within the local authority, and also advocate to my colleagues in Parliament for any legislative changes that need to be made that will help people have a good quality of life in communities. So some of the work that I'm proud of achieving in Longford includes an internship scheme which is currently run by Longford County Council. That was a direct representation I made in 2021 during COVID, and I was promised that post-COVID the county would look at introducing that. And this is the third year running where the council makes a call out for students in third level education to do an internship with Longford County Council. And what that does is provide students the opportunity to learn about local government, which would then encourage them to perform their civic duty at election time. It might inspire some of them to consider a career as public servants as well. And then they'll be earning during the summer months as well, which will then be, a relief for parents. We know students can be very expensive, and it's also an opportunity for a diverse group of young people to get into the local council as well. From the local authority perspective, that also helps them to get additional pairs of hands to help relieve lighten the load, and then it will also enable students in third level to share their expertise, particularly in the area of IT, and with new interventions, new technological interventions, they'll be able to recommend more efficient, more effective ways of running the activities of the various departments within the county council. So I'm very proud to have supported the delivery of that service, which is very beneficial to young people in Longford. And it also helps to ensure that our young people, when they go off to college in the cities and urban areas, they come back to our rural communities and support in socioeconomic development. So another key delivery that I have secured for Longford is free period products in public buildings. That also helps young women and girls who are experiencing period poverty to be able to get period products when they need them, which will reduce truancy in schools, particularly for young girls due to on a lack of affordability of period products, which also, will help encourage young girls to get valuable education, and then to again aspire to careers. Hopefully, some will aspire to careers as public representatives as well. So, in the area of tackling hate crime and hate speech, particularly targeting women, online and in real terms. I actually support the CHA elected group to deliver key training in schools, educating people about local government, supporting getting them to get on the register from age 16 so that when they're age 18, they will be able to vote. And then, making them understand, sharing to them my work as a local councillor, answering questions and making sure that they're well informed, and hopefully some will be inspired, as I said earlier, to consider a career in public service. I've also supported different community groups. For example, the Muslim community, they have a particular burial rites that they practice for their dearly departed. And through my intervention, we secured a section of the cemetery for the Muslim community to perform their funeral rites. So that is something that has supported the Muslim community and giving them more of a sense of belonging in the local community as well. I also ensure that when there's funding calls from the local council or from national government, that I make sure that community groups are made aware of that, and also through the PPN, and to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to secure some bit of funding to run activities in the community that will also support integration, inclusion, and interaction of the diverse community that we have in Longford. So I'm going to stop here and give up. Share more during the discussion session. Again, thanks for the opportunity to share today, and I'll hand back to you now, Liliana.
Thank you, Councillor Remu. And I will ask all of you now to turn on your cameras so we can get into discussion. And I'm really glad, Councillor Remu, that you spoke about all the different projects that you have addressing women's challenges and bringing young women forward to understand what's the role of a councillor. And that's so important, and the reason why we advocate for more women in politics, because only women are able to understand what are women's issues, and will be able to bring those issues to the table and to bring more women forward. So the reason why we really need a bigger push and bigger support, especially in the topic that we are discussing today on abuse against women, and what are those deterrents that are not allow women to come forward due to abuse, violence, and discrimination. And maybe I will start with you, Zoe. And I will ask you, what do you see are the biggest barriers to safe political participation of women today? Thank you.
Thanks, Liliana. Yeah, so I suppose racism is a massive one. So all women in politics are likely to experience sexist abuse, but for racialized identities like Black women, like Traveller and Roma candidates, they're also experiencing racist abuse, and this happens online, it happens offline. There's really high levels of anti-Traveller racism that persist in Irish society. There's one Traveller woman who was considering running, and she said, "How can I run for election? my local community when I can't even get served in my local pub. Like, this is the level of deep-seated racism that we're talking about when it comes to the reality for traveller women today. I know traveller women who've run as candidates who are afraid to go canvassing door to door because they're afraid of exposing themselves to vitriol and abuse. You hear about racist graffiti on posters and the defacement and removal of posters. So just the fear of political violence and abuse, I think, is a massive one for the community, unfortunately, and for other minoritized communities as well. I'm sure others can speak to the same thing.
Thank you, Zoe. And I will bring the same question to Councillor Ejiro. What do you think are the biggest barriers for safe political participation of women in Ireland today?
Yeah, just like the last speaker said, racism is one. When I was asked to run, I didn't visualize the extent of which the attack would be. So I went in, but thanks to God, I had a very good network of mentors. And we have an intercultural network within Finigay as well. And then the TD, who was my mentor, Fergus O'Dad, stood by me the whole way through. From overt abuse, I faced it all on the campaign trail. I heard people clear, it was clear and it was direct at times. People shouting at me, openly expressing the disgust of seeing a Black woman wanting to be in politics in Ireland. It didn't dawn on them that, yes, this Black woman has been here for 36 years of her life. She spent more years here in Ireland than she spent in her own country. This Black woman is actually married to an Irish citizen as well. This Black woman has 4 Irish children who are actually economically contributing to the country. And this Black woman, not only has she come here to train, but she has rendered service to the Irish community. And she sees this community as home and no other home. And so there were slurs like, go back to your country. There were slurs like, oh, look at her. She can't even speak English. And my posters were taken and vandalized at times. My posters online were abused. And to my greatest shock, I was actually surprised that our democracy is such that we allow this to happen. And some of the people who were heaping the slurs at you are actually running for election themselves. Talk about the extent at which democracy can be rogue. That was how I felt. I felt these people shouldn't be allowed to near government, not alone to be carrying placard to say they want to run for election. They want to represent the country that we all live in. So if we allow people like this who are abusing others to run for local government and get elected, what kind of democracy, what kind of country are we going to be handing over to our children and our children's children? That was the biggest concern I had in my mind, that these people were actually running for election too. And they were not just men, but they were women like myself. And even on the day of the count, I met face-to-face with one of them. And my husband actually had a conversation with her partner, only to find that her partner was from Russia. So even her partner was not even Irish. But yet she has the audacity to abuse me online, to vandalize my posters online, and to even tell me to go back to my country because Ireland is for Ireland. And when my husband had a conversation with her partner, when he threw one question at him, so where are you from yourself? Do you know anything about Irish politics? He said, I'm from Russia. But why is your partner campaigning against my wife when he sees my wife running for election? And you know what he answered? He said, of skin color, we don't want Black people here. Categorically, very clear and direct attack. So if that is happening in the forefront of our political career and the forefront of people who are going to run our government, I think the government at this stage has to be looking at the policies we have for people who are running for government. One, to protect the ones who are vulnerable, but two, to make sure that unless you're democratically representative of everybody, you shouldn't be allowed to step your foot on the door of local politics. Discrimination should not be allowed within our local government in all form,
Absolutely.
whether it be direct, racial, or systematic. It shouldn't be allowed.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And I'm really sorry that we still have that kind of behaviors, and it's so blankly and direct, because all the reports that we've been seeing is that the majority of this violence occurs online. But it's obviously that it's not only online, the space, and obviously women are particularly targeted, and women from minority backgrounds. And I will bring Councillor Uremu to see if she also, I mean, and obviously share whatever you feel comfortable with. If you experience any challenges as well while running for election, or even during your previous period as a councillor.
Yes, indeed, indeed, I did both times, Liliana. But before I go into my experience, I think just to answer the question in general terms in relation to the barriers, I think one of the big barriers is the culture, and by culture I mean the tradition that politics and governance is a male-dominated field, and also misogyny that exists in the system. And that is one thing that really feeds into the online abuse that female public representatives experience compared to our male counterparts. And then also the absence of appropriate and adequate hate speech and hate crime legislation that will serve as a deterrent for the perpetrators of this activity. The absence of punitive measures just continues to embolden people in, conducting themselves in such an unacceptable and antisocial manner. And then I think also regulation of social media platforms. That is also a huge barrier, because I believe if these platforms are regulated adequately to ensure that people that engage in those platforms are guaranteed to engage safely and not be triggered or gaslit or abused, I think if platforms are held to account, there'll be more of a sweeping and a cleaning up of social media platforms. Indeed, we can see with Twitter, when it became X, how our active engagement to ensure that people participate in safe interactions was turned 180 when that fellow took over X and then started returning people that had been banned for unacceptable conduct back onto the platform, which has then led so many people, so many great female examples of leadership and inspirational people to move away from X, which is detrimental to the effort to encourage female participation as well. So coming down to my experience, like Councillor Ejiro, I would have experienced all of that as well. More so the first time that I ran, there were people, challenging my information I shared on social media. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why, if you don't agree with my message, you're even bothering to engage with me. So I, didn't allow any of that nonsense on my page, particularly because I have young children. I don't want them to see me being harassed online. So I did a lot of hiding of unacceptable content on my page. And now on X, because I tried to leave X, but a lot of information is there. As much as it's there are a lot of people conducting themselves unacceptably. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of relevant content that will be of benefit to community groups in Longford. So for that reason, I remained on X, but I have kind of filtered who's allowed to interact with my post, to interact with my page, which has given me a bit of peace because I lost communication with a lot of friends on X because so many far right individuals were targeting my posts, so the algorithms was pushing my post to the wrong crowd. So when I started limiting communications, the right people started coming back on my post. But one thing I've resolved to do is not share my opinion online because that's a recipe for disaster. I just, restrain myself to sharing just information, factual information, anything that I agree with. I hit like, I repost. But in terms of sharing my my opinion on topical issues, I just don't bother, particularly on X, because like I don't want to be descended upon again for the sake of my children and other young people who see me as an inspirational person, because I want to continue in my message to support migrants and support young women to and women in general to consider work as public representative, because I believe that without balance, we will continue to have the legacy issues from one decade to the next.
Thank you very much, Councillor Remu. And I think you mentioned something very important there in terms of the level of engagement, that it seems like it had reduced since you started noticing more online abuse. And obviously that's a huge pity for our democracy, because what it's causing is our public representatives don't want to expose themselves to more hate, more abuse, especially if they have family. And it's a huge pity because, and I read some of these consequences on the EROC task force or safe participation in political life. And with that, I want to bring Noreen to talk about if you notice any patterns or any difference in terms of abuse when it comes to women, minority women's, and experiencing threats or barriers. So are there any differences towards minority groups, and what other findings did you get from the task force on safe participation in political life? Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. And before I get into that, might I say thank you to both of our councillors and Zoe for sharing the experiences, because it unfortunately doesn't come as a surprise to me to hear your experiences, because during our task force work, we actually had the involvement of a number of people who were courageous enough to give us personal testimony. And some of it was very harrowing, I suppose very real and triggering for them, reliving some of the real life experiences. And I think, as both Ijaro and Amora has said, it happens online and in person, and that's the unfortunate experience. And I think also what has come out with what we've just heard from our panelists is the impact that has on individuals, that chilling effect that people are afraid to raise certain issues or engage on certain platforms, but also the concerns particularly for individual family members. And we heard that again, that people's families were actually targeted. We saw it recently in west of Dublin, where a female councillor and her husband were physically assaulted during their canvassing. And also what we see is in terms of staff members. So people are very concerned about their staff and their supporters when they're on the canvas trail, etc. And maybe if I can, Liliana, just to give you, so we heard all of this testimony. The reason that the task force was set up, because there was, anecdotes, reports of this type of abuse happening. But in order to actually do away with the naysayers and produce a firm evidence base, we actually had UCD conduct a piece of research. And I will just for a moment just take some of the findings from the research, because it was one of the widest surveys that was ever done. It was the first survey of its kind ever done anywhere in the world, and particularly in Europe. So we wanted to make sure that we had a very solid evidence base. And some of the findings were that 94%, so this was in relation to Oireachtas members, but you will know that the Association of Irish Local Government, have recently done a similar survey, and we compared their findings as well. But for the Oireachtas, 94% of Oireachtas members and 72% of their political staff, that's people coming in and out to work every day, had experienced some sort of threat, harassment, abuse, or violence. 73% of those members experienced it online on social media frequently, and 36% experienced abuse while socializing, not even when they were working, but socializing in social settings, sometimes, for example, in the shop while they were shopping. And almost 25% of political staff likewise experienced abuse on social media or at constituency offices or while canvassing. And the types of abuse were use of abusive language, prejudicial slurs, the publication of false information, comments on physical appearance, spread of malicious and false rumours, and persistent unwanted telephone calls and nuisance calls. And, you know, I think what you asked was there a difference? So what we did look was what was the difference in the prevalence between men and women, and then tried to look at minority groups. And the UCD survey, I'm very happy to share it with you because it is now on public record. But yes, there was very much a gendered aspect when it came to women. But women then of minority, women of colour, women of different ethnicity, or even using different language, that brought on more abuse. So there was a disproportionate impact on women and minority groups. And then what we tried to do was look at what were the causes and what were the root causes of these issues. And no surprising, and it's already been mentioned. So we found that most of the abuse was driven by misogyny, sexism, which is really interesting because, as we know, they're two different things and we shouldn't forget that, racism, homophobia, xenophobia, and interestingly, intolerance of different opinions and different perspectives. And I think what our councillors here on the panel have just described is further evidence of that. And what was really concerning was the extent and the prevalence and the increasing intensity of some of this. And I know we will go on to talk, I hope, about the difference with online platforms, what can be done. But I would like to just balance that with saying what was encouraging also, despite that we heard the personal testimony of women, women from minorities. We had a lot of inputs from a lot of the groups that are represented here. And we also did a comparison with the EU Parliament to see were there similar findings? And unfortunately, the answer is yes. So it is not just a European, but a global phenomenon. But what's also interesting is that actually we also wanted to work with the AILG in particular to see what impact was it have on people coming forward. And the good news was that actually, and I think it is very much down to the support networks that are in place that have already been mentioned, but actually 54% of women still went forward for the last elections. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the result still wasn't good enough. But nevertheless, I think that's encouraging that despite all of this, that some of those barriers are being overcome because by the determination and the personal resilience and the support that women have in place. So, but I'm happy to go further into that, Liliana, whenever you feel it's appropriate.
Thank you very much, Noreen. Yeah, I suppose, and the challenge here is that yes, we know and we have heard these stories over and over, and unfortunately it's increasing, and that the evidence is showing us that it's increasing, and that women still are disproportionately targeted when it comes to online and offline abuse. Obviously, we wouldn't like anyone to be targeted, and especially those candidates from minority backgrounds. However, we don't see yet how can we stop this, because we know that this have an influence. I mean, regardless of the support that they might have in the local grounds. And Councillor Ejiro was saying this, that thanks to the support that she had in her team, she was strongly encouraged. And I think that we really need to take this seriously, and we are taking it seriously with the task force on safe political participation live. But what else? And maybe I'll go back to you. I'll go to Zoe in a second, but I'll go back to you, Noreen, in terms of the policy recommendations in the report. And actually, before I ask anything, I will encourage people in the audience to put their questions in the box as well, please. What are the recommendations that you think are the most urgent to implement, Noreen, from the task force on safe political participation live?
So there are a couple of things I will say to that, Liliana, if I may. So basically, we were very conscious when we were coming up with the recommendations of the task force to make them short, sharp, and doable, achievable in very real time, because this is a real problem. There is an urgent call to action. So we actually created an implementation plan. And there is a steering group set up within the House of the Oireachtas to implement, because what we found was there was a need for, and I think it was mentioned earlier by one of the other panelists, it needs to have a systematic approach right across government and the various departments that have something to do with it. But I think also there's something, so all of them are urgent is what I would say. All of them are absolutely necessary. We have made recommendations for political parties themselves in terms of how they encourage and treat candidates. And very importantly in that is actually about internal pathways for reporting. Because one of the recommendations we have made, and it has come out in the conversations, we all as a society and as individuals and as collective organizations have to adopt a zero tolerance approach. And sometimes zero tolerance is very easy to say, but very hard to do. But I think it's all of us, starting with the individual at the grassroots level, just been upstanders, speaking up when we see behaviors that are unacceptable, having that courage to do that and be able to today, the types of behaviors that we heard about during, and that means whether that's in person or online. In relation to online, some of the recommendations we made were that there would be a commissioner on, so the Commissioner on Media Regulation has certain powers, and that those powers need to be implemented, and they need to be implemented urgently. So we did recommend that there would be a group set up, which would have the Houses of the Oireachtas, the Media Commission, the Electoral Commissioner, Commissioner Tiagan, all represented on it, that actually not alone just for the moderating of harmful content online, but actually that there would be social media defense mechanisms put in place. Because we heard from, for example, the Australian e-Commissioner, so a lot of work around social media defense. So how do people prepare themselves and defend themselves in social media, and an understanding of what's happening there. And we also visited the Houses of Westminster to see what's been done there, because obviously after the murders of Joe Cox and Sir David Amos, a lot of work was done within Westminster Parliament. So actually a lot of our suite of recommendations are based on international research, based on what can be done here. They're thematically grouped so that it can be done, but what's needed badly is cross-functional implementation. So for example, I think it was Councillor Umra said about the integration policies. So for example, the Department of Integration have a lot of programs, a lot of policies, but actually creating the awareness of that. And if I may say one more thing, Liliana, and then I will stop, you know, for civil society as well, there needs to be greater awareness creation. And I think this where particularly, I'm delighted today that there are advocacy groups and local councillors, and we've heard evidence of, you know, people going into the schools and people in their communities. But we need to create a greater awareness what diverse representation in politics means and what benefits are there. Because, you know, for our democracy to survive and thrive, we need for everybody's voice to be heard, and we need for everybody to have a part in decision making. So I'll stop there, Liliana, but very, very happy to deep dive into any of it.
Thank you very much, Noreen. I think we're going to go back to the recommendations of the report in a second. And I want to bring forward maybe Zoe to give us maybe your opinions on, in terms of the political parties, what do you think they could be doing to support more diverse women, especially traveler women, to be encouraged to enter, to be members of parties, and to be reassured that the parties are doing their part to support more women, diverse women in politics.
Thanks so much, Liliana. Yeah, so the reality is that most travelers who run tend to run as independents. And the reason for that is that they just don't see any of the major political parties as representing their needs or having their interests at heart. So they feel excluded from the major political parties. And, you know, it's still relatively common for representatives representatives from political parties to use anti-traveller rhetoric as part of their own platform for their own ends. And, this isn't something that in a lot of parties is treated seriously and there's not adequate sanctions for. So this is something that parties need to reckon with, that there are, in fact, communities that just don't feel represented by them or don't feel welcome within the parties. And it's up to parties then to sort of look inward and see what they can do about that. So I think one thing that they could be looking at is ring-fenced funding to support minoritized candidates, recognizing that they are going to face additional barriers that, members of the settled community or others, aren't going to experience. So traveller women, for example, they're much more likely to experience, educational disadvantage or unemployment and, live in poverty and material deprivation. So there's, the significant cost of running can be a major deterrent for them running. So this is something that they need to recognize. Oh, sorry. And also, if you're a woman at all, you're probably more likely to be faced with caring responsibilities. So parties, whether you're a traveller or whether you're a migrant, like that's something that most women are going to have to contend with as well. So they need to put support structures in place to alleviate those difficulties. And then as well, like just really be consciously working to reach out to the communities that they haven't had interactions with to date. So make sure that any internship programs or mentoring programs are extended out to the traveller community, to Romas, to migrant women, and again, make sure, just what I was touching on earlier about kind of inner party workings, make sure there's zero tolerance for sexism and racism and that there's very clear channels for people to report those things where they are happening, because sometimes for candidates as well, there can be an apprehension to report sexism or racism because they don't want to make a fuss or to change how people are thinking about them. So, there obviously needs to be very clear channels there. And sorry, one last thing, and that'll be quiet. Looking at data as well, like gender disaggregated diversity data for all the political parties to be tracked over time would be just really helpful for informing kind of future policy changes, and also to act as an incentive for the parties themselves to adopt a more kind of diverse cohort. So if they actually have to report on the makeup of who makes up their party, it is kind of something that might make them think a little bit more strongly about it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Zoe. That's very comprehensive, and it's a lot. I mean, what you are sharing today, guys, is really good, because obviously it's giving a lot of ideas to people, like how do we overcome so many barriers, not only racism and violence, which is a huge one, but some other barriers that women face to consider a career in politics. And hopefully we can inspire, we can move forward and see what specific recommendations we can push from the task force report. And that's an urgent one to tackle. Like so many recommendations out there already that we know, but it's like, what's the next step? So I will go back to the counselors, and will you talk a little bit about your own parties in terms of how do you think they are trying to, aside from your individual efforts as a parties, how do you think are they trying to overcome some of the barriers that we've been discussing today, especially the abuse against women and racism against minority women? Thank you. Maybe I'll start with Councillor Giro.
Yeah. Again, before I go into my party, I just want to seize the opportunity to acknowledge and thank the community of Drogheda. Regardless of all the racial abuse or anything I face at the door, the people of Drogheda put their trust in me and they voted for me. They support me. They believed in change and they thought the time was right. They were very committed to inclusivity, and they made this future possible for me to be elected as the first Black woman in Loud, a migrant woman, a community activist, and they elected me to public office, not just to represent them, but to carry forward their hopes, their concerns and strength. In every decision I make from today, I have that behind my mind always. They didn't just vote for me, like I said, they voted for progress. And they voted for dignity. They voted for a voice that can speak from lived experience, which is very important. It shows that together we are showing what is possible when communities come together and demand better. And I will never take this for granted. As for my political party, the party of Finigay, which I represent, yes, they were very open to change as well. If they weren't, they wouldn't have knocked at my door to ask me if I would run for election. That is a big move. And that is a very bold move. They took a chance on me. In a community where they had no seat, to put a Black woman forward was a very, very bold move. And it was a huge trust. We have the Finigay Women Network. They rallied around me. There was training provided from me from day one because I was never in politics. This was all new to me. The support network was such that it became really like a family. I went for the political training. I actually signed up for CI elected training in the beginning before ever politics came into my mind. And I did 2 lessons and I said, look, this is not the time for me. I go focus my attention in other things. Little did I know that within that journey, 2 months later, a political party will be coming knocking at my door. And I stopped and I said, oh, there is a calling here. And I answered that call, and I'm glad I did. For the party, throughout, they called out the abuse because when it happened online, one of the TD raised it at the door, which to me was a huge voice of support. They supported me all the way. They offered platform. They came canvassing with me. A lot of my canvas trade were not just from those from minority background. They were the women network coming to canvass, the Finigay youth coming to canvass, and these were all mixed cultures. So it's a very strong political party. I think Finigay itself is doing its best when it comes to women representation, when it comes to the diverse migrant being represented as well. Only for some of the political systematic systematic exclusion that sometimes not known to everybody that is still in our political system, I would have actually run for the door as well because my constituency put me forward. So that is something we have to walk into and I will be bringing this to the attention of the party going forward, that look, maybe the system has to change. Layers have to be created so that migrant women from migrant community can actually be represented not only at local government, but in the door. Look at all the women that are in local government at the minute from migrant background. How many women in the door are from migrant background? So that is a big challenge. That is something we have to work on. But I believe with the fact that the community here has embraced me, this change is ongoing. And this change is being transferred to the children who are coming and to the adults who are already there. 37 years ago, when I came to Drogheda was very much a re-Irish community. If you see a Black person, there might be a sailor or people who come to the hospital to train as doctors or nurses. But look at the community today, it's so diverse. And that's good news for a society like Ireland and for a society we actually believe in. That's good news. We have now people from different backgrounds working in our health system in managerial posts. When I became a manager in my hospital, I was the only migrant person in senior management position. But today I'm proud to say we have more than me. We have people from India in management position. We have people from Philippines in management position. So the community is changing. Ireland is changing. It's good news on the horizon, but it's a good news that is the good effort and the good work that everybody is putting in. And Finigay is at the forefront of that mission. And we will not give up. until we achieve it.
Thank you very much, and I see what you mean, because in fact the party ran a few migrant candidates, and that's why we just pairing it with what Zoe was saying. We would like to see bigger membership, a more transparent way of seeing how diverse is the membership of each of the parties, so that they can really be put in the ballot and with plenty of support. Now I will bring a similar question to Councillor Uremu, but I'm really interested to know, within the parties, do you see structures? Do you have structures of how to report racism within the party?
Thanks, Liliana, sorry. Yes, so there is a reporting structure for any complaints within the organization, and those complaints are referred to the Rules and Procedures committee, I believe, and then they're adequately investigated, and whoever needs to be contacted is made contact with, and the national executive decide on the or agree on the procedure to deal with whatever issue has been brought forward in general terms. And I think it was Noreen that said it earlier, in terms of, it's one thing to bring these processes, but if there is no engagement, we can't move forward. So and there is a huge unwillingness, even on my part, to rock the boat and to highlight or to call out issues as they arise, because you don't want to be a pariah, you don't want to be kicked out of the INAR circle. So most of the time you just grin and bear it, or KMT, as the young people would say. So but the structures are there. The question is, how often is it used, which is down to the members. And just in relation to my party, Fianna Fáil's steps to, I suppose, make the party more inclusive, we actually have an active Fianna Fáil Migrants Network, of which I'm the chairperson, and we work to reach out to all the migrant members of the party, to support them, to encourage them, to give them the tools if they need to be more active within their community groups. So we're very focused on making the party space more diverse and more representative of the communities. And we're also keen to support people in who wish to become public representative, like Ejiro and her party. We also ran more migrant candidates, and as well as the challenge of returning more female public representatives, there is also a huge challenge to return more migrant public representatives as well. And it's a challenge we have to keep working to tackle by raising awareness, by making interactive spaces safer. I think the first time I encountered people's aversion to the traveller community was when I was working in the private sector, and I was speaking to somebody in the HR team, and they just casually remarked that the organization shies away from hiring people from the traveller community, because if there's an issue, the family members turn up and cause chaos. And like, my mouth was open. Like, why would you disenfranchise an individual because of a perceived reaction from a group of people? That could absolutely be anybody from any background, causing chaos and causing commotion in community. I thought that it was so unfair to reject somebody's application when they're trying to, forge a better career and a better life for themselves, to put a barrier there and make them know that despite your best efforts, you're not going to get on. I thought that was just so unfair. And I would echo Zoe's call for people to support the traveller community, and I would challenge everyone in your engagement to check, your contacts. How many traveler contacts do you have? How many friends do you have from the traveler community in your friends group? And how many people of migrant background do you have in your friends group? Because unless we take it as a personal responsibility, as I have, as Councillor Ejiro has, to put ourselves forward, unless we take responsibility to support the people in our community, we're going to continue to encounter these problems. So as we're pushing the system, as we're pushing the government to change the system to make our society more representative, it's up to us to make our own inner spaces more representative as well. And collectively, we will definitely move the dial. And I might ask as well, how many people, give higher preference votes to females on the ballots? I've heard female representatives say, I'm not going to just, vote for any woman. But the men are voting for any man. People are voting for anybody on the ballot. They're not looking at whether they are working hard or they delivered on X, Y, and Z. They are voting because, okay, I know this person. So if we are being gatekeepers for the females who put themselves forward, we are going to continue to encounter the same problem. So I would challenge every woman in our society, give at least your first or second preference to a woman, and we will see a dramatic shift in female representation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Uremu, and we definitely advocate for more progressive women, if possible, into our politics to look for women's rights and put forward more policies that are progressive for our women out there. So I'll go back to you, Noreen, and we will be, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, but we will be closing by 1:45. But I'd like to come back to you, Noreen, in terms of the actual report implementation plan that you were talking about. Where are we at the implementation plan of the task force for a safer political participation live, and what can we do to support, to speed up the actual implementation of that? And I'm sure there are loads of recommendations there, but where do we stand right now? Thanks.
So thank you, Liliana. So yes, there were 23 recommendations made. And there is a strategic oversight coordination group, which is chaired by an assistant secretary within the Oireachtas, who's actually driving forward the recommendations. And they have had a number of meetings. So the way we structured it was all of the agencies that are affected, including local government agencies, are included in it, because I think it's very important, as we have said, this is about leadership from the very, very top, but cascading all of the way down. And if I could just pick up on something that Councillor Uremu said, for everybody that's listening, for all of us, I think it's a real challenge, and it's a call to arms for all of us, because every single one of us has an opportunity to actually change. So this feeds into the implementation. It's about changing attitudes. It's about raising awareness. And sometimes I think we all individually and collectively underestimate the power of our own persuasion on our families, on our communities, and on the people that we encounter with. So I would endorse what Councillor Uremu has said. Every single one of us should take the challenge of actually starting to address things, challenge behaviours. And one of the important parts of the recommendations is actually about that zero tolerance approach. And I'm really conscious when we were making that recommendation, that takes quite a lot of courage, because, some of the evidence that we found during our deliberations in the task force, but also hearing is, there's a perception that if I want to enter into politics or public life, well, I just have to take the heat. And if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Well, actually, nobody should have to tolerate abuse of any kind. Nobody should tolerate racism, xenophobia, intolerance, anything in their workplace. So what we did, we were very conscious as well. We had the Garda Síochána, the police service in, and we've set up structures. Garda Síochána have set up structures at national level, but also at local level. And I think that's an important message to get out there, to actually support people that want to make reports, to actually support, because when a person is abused like that, they are victims of a crime. So to support the victim through the court service, and actually then to keep in touch and engage with an outcome. And some cases may not go to court, but I think that people know that they've been listened to, that action has been taken, and that also acts as a deterrent to those that would abuse their position in life, to actually abuse other people, irrespective of what they are, because I think that's where if we challenge the intolerance that's there individually and collectively, and people are held to account for it, that means that actually that in itself acts as a deterrent. And I think that's an important aspect of it. And also in terms of, crime prevention advice, and I would say even at local level, understanding that actually you don't have to take this abuse. That should not be an accepted part of your workplace. And creating a forum. So, for example, I know when I worked in Garda Síochána, and I'd like to touch off something Zoe said, we set up the Garda Racial and Intercultural Office. So to create greater awareness, greater engagement, and greater acceptance of what it means to be different. And I think it was Councillor Ejiro had said, Ireland is such a different place. We need to have much more integration with our new communities because there's so much benefit to be actually gained. And how do we create that? So then back to the task force reports, what I would really like to see is that there's more urgency given around the implementation. So part of the recommendation that we made, as I said earlier, was from political parties, but all the way up to the Ceann Comhairle and the Cathaoirleach, and that there would be a report from this implementation group on a half-yearly basis into the Cathaoirleach and the Ceann Comhairle in terms of what has been done and what has been achieved, and if there are any other departments that need to be brought on board, because this is such an important aspect of our democracy, of our ability to live in a safe and inclusive way, all of us together, enjoying the difference that we all bring and that wealth of experience and perspective that is actually going to make Ireland a much better place. And when I look particularly at the challenges we're facing in the world at the moment and what we can do in terms of our democracy, and we in Ireland live in a very privileged position, and I know everybody on this call knows that, but when we think about it in the terms of democracy, there's only 13% and less now of the world that actually enjoys the democratic freedoms and the rights that we enjoy. And we shouldn't take that for granted. We need to actually stand up and advocate and support and build on those platforms that we have, and that we can actually enjoy and thrive as a democracy, as a country that people can come to, feel safe, feel included, and be able to give of their all, as we've heard from our panelists today, be able to contribute to Irish life and Irish society, and that we all become part of one community for the betterment of everybody. So I hope that answers the question, Liliana.
It does answer the question. So it's basically every 6 months there will be like a brief or something. I mean, hopefully that's public available, and we can all see that there is some sort of progress, and obviously we will be more than delighted to take part, to support in any way we can, and I'm sure most of the panelists here as well. So if there is any way that we can see a public brief or something every 6 months or whatever is in the implementation plan, is that implementation plan online available at the moment? It is.
Yes,
okay.
It is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
So the implementation plan and the timeline. So we also put timelines on when we would expect it. So my understanding is it's on track at the moment. So basically, but what we want to see is actually then, and I will pick up on something Zoe said, one of the recommendations we have is that Commission Teagan, so the Electoral Commission, will continue the research that was started by UCD, that we will actually build on that research to provide a base level to see how things are improving and what else needs to be done, what adjustments need to be made to actually get more traction, to get more momentum. And but I will certainly feed that back, that actually, and I know that the National Women's Council, and I know that Zoe's organisation and the AILG had made a lot of submissions to task force and remain engaged as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nuri. Now, I'm going to start closing the panel. So I will give a word to each of the panelists to share anything else that you would like the participants to know, the attendees, how the civil society can take part as an individual or as an organization to support more women in politics, to fight against violence for women, and anything you want to share before we close today's session. And thank you so much for everyone who took their time to join us today. Sorry, starting with Zoe, perhaps. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Eliana. Yeah, so for civil society organizations to do their bit to try and contribute to safer political life, I suppose just try at whatever kind of network of women that you're working with, create networks for them so that they can meet and talk about their experiences together, that they can share their expertise. If you're looking at, hiring people for boards or steering committees, consider, a woman from a minoritized background and try and elevate women where you can. Also, creating inclusive political training. We do, we do it in our own organization for travelers, and it's inclusive of traveler culture specifically. But there are so many communities who would need similar training for their own particular needs as well. And, incorporating role models into that can be really helpful. And then just for individuals, I think it's been said already, we all have an obligation to play in this part, calling out hate speech and sexism where you see it. If it's online, report it. Stand in solidarity with those who are experiencing hate speech and abuse. Show them that they're not alone. Everyone can do that.
Thank you very much. So it's very important create those support networks for all the candidates, as Councillor Ejiro highlighted. It helped her a lot. Councillor Remu, can I go with you now? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Liliana. Just in closing, just to encourage everybody to support your female local representative, and just to cite a contribution from Philomena Obasi. Hi, Philomena. Just promoting support network for migrant women in politics, not just from political parties, but from mainstream media and the general public, because it's a prerequisite for political participation from diverse communities for inclusive policies to thrive. And if we are having challenges, if we're having issues in the workplace, in a community, in schools, the only way to tackle it is for representation, so that people who have a lived experience can share their experiences and support the changes in policies that will be fit for purpose, because it's not just about making changes in policy. It's about making the right changes in policy that will enable all of us have a positive experience and live comfortable lives. If my life is comfortable, I wouldn't be having issues with my next door neighbor. So if anybody's having issues in the community, it is an indication that there is a problem, and we have to do a root cause analysis to make sure that we tackle those problems decisively so there isn't a recurrence, and we have a calm and inclusive society for ourselves and for the next generation, to have a more inclusive, more representative, more balanced society, because I believe there's a space for men and women in society. I have 2 boys and a girl, and I want all of them to have equal opportunities in life. So I'm looking for more female representation, more migrant representation, more a balanced native representation as well, so that we are all, representative in our government and in our community. So thanks very much, Leah, and thanks again to everybody for being here.
Thank you, Councillor Remu. Councillor Ejiro, and then we finish with Noreen. Thank you. You're muted, Councillor Ejiro.
Sorry. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the National Women's Council for organizing this, okay? In my own community, like I said, apart from working in the hospital and now in politics, I started an organization called Hands for Unity. And in Hands for Unity, we are like the bridge between the migrant community and the host community. The work we're doing in Drogheda, like I said, have brought people from different nationality into local council, even before I ran for election. Okay, so we can individually act as bridges between communities and political system. I'm hoping that now being a councillor, I'm going to encourage more people to get engaged with community groups, because getting engaged, getting involved in your community, even things like tidy towns across the country. What we're doing here in Drogheda, in Hands for Unity, celebrating culture through Taste of Our Nation, I want to replicate that throughout the country, because it's when you really get into people's own community spirit, the way they live, that's when the acceptance become more acceptable. So we have a role to play. One of us here have a role to play in welcoming others into our community. But for political parties, I want to see a situation. Yes, there are laws that safeguard women being in politics, but we still keep making decisions behind closed doors sometimes. I'm not speaking for Finnegan, but I'm speaking for our political party here. Okay, we're still making decisions behind closed doors. We're still selecting the same people to run for government. If we're not doing that, there will be more migrant women, more women in the door today. So I'm hoping that our present government, being it from any political party, we get rid of systematic exclusion of women in our politics here in Ireland, so that the door will be open for people who genuinely want to participate, who genuinely want to make our community inclusive. The door needs to have a Black woman before I know we are really democratic. We need to have a migrant woman before I know we're really embracing democracy. We need to have a traveler before I know we're really embracing democracy. I haven't seen a traveler TD yet. Maybe there is one. Is there one, Zoe?
No, we have a, hang on, I'm not on mute, am I? Sorry. We have a traveller senator, Senator Eileen Flynn, who came in as a Taoiseach's nominee originally, but then earlier this year she was voted in on her own stream, which is great.
Yeah, but
So we've got
not a
one,
TD.
no
Not one
TDs,
TD.
never a
Not one
TD.
minister. Not one
No,
minister.
never, never in the Dáil at all. Yeah.
So until we get to that level where there is no differences between me and between a traveler and an Irish person, we are all really Irish. We're integrated, and we are here to contribute. Why is Zoe saying that the big parties don't feel safe within the big party? Now, Zoe, I'm opening the door to you. Join Finnegan. We'll make it happen, because I believe once our decision making are made in open forum, then there's no hidden agenda behind anybody, behind any poll to discriminate against anyone. We reserve the right for everybody to be treated equal. We reserve the right for everybody to be seen as special. We reserve the right for everybody to be seen as people who can contribute. We all have brains, no matter where you're from, no matter the color of your skin, no matter the nationality or your ethnical background. So I'm thankful that Finnegan has embraced me, has welcomed me in their midst. And I'm hoping that with the little interest and the engagement I've had with the party, that things will change, things will move forward. It wouldn't just be a Giro, only one a Giro. It will be 20, 30 a Giro in local government in time to come. And it wouldn't just be a Giro alone, but it would be a Giro with the travelers sitting hand by hand together. We are Irish. And we should be seen as Irish. We should be seen as people who can contribute. Doesn't matter what our background is. And that is one thing I've managed to achieve in Hands for Unity. In Hands for Unity, it doesn't matter the level of your education. If you have a skill, we engage with that skill and we enable you to put that skill into action. And that is what society should be like. The faces representing our government should be the same. Yes, I went to local government. There are people who vote for people who they know. I'm glad the Irish community trusted me in Drogheda. They voted me in, no matter the bad publicity that I was getting online, on Facebook, on X. But they trusted me and they voted me in. And not one single soul hasn't come to me since I became a councillor to say, oh, well done. We like what you're doing. Keep doing it. And they're not just people from migrant community. These are people who are Irish from every community. So this is really what I would hope, that as a community, as a country, we will celebrate diversity. And we will embrace diversity, not just as a tick box exercise, but as something we're genuinely engaging with. And I can assure you, I think my party, Finnegan, is doing that unknown to them. They're doing it at the minute, but until I see them bringing somebody to the door, I will be saying to them, no, it's still a peacemaking exercise. Deliver and deliver the whole way. So that in the mix, when you're standing together representing the country, you have different colors and different shade in the face of your magazine, not only white colors.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giro. And you touched on something very, very important, which is the incumbency problem, that we have the same man running over and over and over within the main parties, just to highlight that as well. So it's very important to have people like you in the party highlighting this issue and fighting through it. And thank you for sharing that. Councillor Noreen, Noreen, not Councillor Noreen. You can finish now. Thank you. I think you're muted. Noreen, I'm waiting for you. I think you're muted. Can I unmute you? No? Okay. So now I'm going to end this conversation. I think there were some other comments in the chat. Someone said, I come from a dual heritage background with a grandmother who was an Irish traveler. I'm very proud of my heritage, and this needs to be reflected in government. And like as we said today, I think Noreen couldn't join the last minute, but you touched in your latest intervention how people should be taking part, civil society and individuals, in highlighting the issues and supporting more women from diverse backgrounds to join these conversations. And we should continue having this conversation more often. I will send a huge appreciation to our panelists today, to the people who joined us today as well. Thank you, Noreen, for your time. Thank you, Zoe, Councillor Giro, and Councillor Uremu. I'm sure we will continue engaging in this conversation, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon. And thank you for your time. All the best.